There's a special kind of fear that doesn't always show up as screaming panic. Sometimes it looks like this. You wake up and immediately reach for your phone. You put a podcast on while you shower. You text 3 different people just to feel some kind of thread. When you get home, you turn on YouTube, Netflix, music, anything, just so the room doesn't feel too loud in its silence. You say you hate being alone, but if you're honest, it's not the empty room that scares you. It's the feeling that in that room, with no one else to respond to, distract you or validate you, you might have to actually meet yourself. Carl Jung would say, if being alone terrifies you, it's often because you haven't yet formed a real relationship with your own soul. You know how to show up for others. You know how to perform, to please, to be on, to respond to what is needed. But when the audience leaves and the mask comes off, you don't quite know who is underneath. Before we go further, pause with me for a moment. If you've ever felt that strange panic when plans get cancelled, when the house is quiet, when your phone is dry, and you're starting to realize it's not just boredom, but something deeper, type the word "here" in the comments. Just that one word. You're not explaining your whole story. You're simply telling your own soul, I am willing to learn how to be here with myself. And if you keep landing on messages like this at the exact moment you need them, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel so these reminders don't get lost in the noise the next time you need them. At the end of this video, a playlist will pop up on the end screen. Save it, and when you're about to sleep tonight, let it play softly in the background. Your body will rest, but your subconscious will keep listening, keep soothing, keep learning that being with yourself is not a threat, but a home you're allowed to return to. Now, let's talk about why being alone can feel so frightening, and why that fear is often a sign that you don't really know yourself yet. But you can. Most of us were never taught how to be with ourselves. Think about what being alone meant when you were young. For some, it meant punishment. Go to your room. Think about what you've done. For others, it meant neglect. Nobody noticing your feelings, nobody asking what was wrong, you crying quietly in a corner so you wouldn't bother anyone. Or maybe it meant danger, being alone in your thoughts with anxiety, being left in an environment that didn't feel emotionally safe, learning that if no one's around, you're unprotected. Your nervous system remembers that. So now, as an adult, being alone doesn't register as rest. It registers as, I'm not safe. I'm not seen. I'm abandoned. I'm about to be swallowed by my own mind. Jung would say that your reaction to solitude is never just about the present moment. It's also about the old complexes, emotional knots that get activated when you're not distracted. When you're with others, the persona, the social mask, steps in. You become the helpful one, the funny one, the strong one, the calm one, the listener, the achiever. You have a role. You know the script. But when you're alone, the mask has no one to perform for. And suddenly the question becomes, if I'm not doing anything for anyone else right now, who am I? If that question feels terrifying, it's usually because so much of your identity has been built on reaction, on who you are to others, and not on relationship with your own self. Being alone doesn't hurt because you're boring. It hurts because you're a stranger to yourself, when silence exposes the voices in your head. One reason solitude feels unbearable is because of what starts speaking when the noise stops. The room gets quiet, and the volume in your mind goes up. You're behind. You're unlovable. You're weird. You're wasting your life. Look at everyone else. They're out there living, and you're here, alone. Jung would say many of these voices are not actually you. They are internalized figures, echoes of parents, peers, culture, exes, teachers, religion, all mixed into one harsh inner critic that you've mistaken for your own judgment. So when the external world goes silent, you're left trapped in a room with this inner chorus. Of course you avoid that. Of course you scroll. Of course you chase attention. Of course you panic when someone doesn't reply. It's not that you can't handle your own company. It's that you've never differentiated yourself from the inner bully that lives in your head. If every time you're alone, the first thing you hear is, "See, nobody wants you," this proves it. Then, of course, being alone feels like emotional self-harm. But here is the thing Jung would want you to remember. The self, the deepest, wisest center of you, is not that voice. The self speaks quieter. It doesn't attack. It observes. It invites. It asks questions like, "What do you need?" and "What's true for you?" Learning to be alone is, in many ways, learning to turn the volume down on the old voices so that you can finally hear the deeper one underneath. If this is landing uncomfortably but honestly, if you're recognizing your own patterns of constant distraction, constant noise, constant reaching outward, take a breath with me. You're not broken for not knowing how to be alone. You were simply never shown how to be with yourself without judgment. If this resonates, take a second to like this video and subscribe if you haven't yet, so you have somewhere to come back to on the days when the silence feels especially loud. Now let's go deeper into Jung's idea. If you're scared to be alone, you don't know yourself yet, because this isn't an insult, it's an invitation. Not knowing yourself is deeply human. You're not the only one who can't sit in a quiet room without reaching for your phone. Look around. Almost everyone is scrolling. Almost everyone is plugged into something. Almost everyone is terrified of unmediated contact with their own thoughts. Jung would say this is because most people have built their identity horizontally, not vertically. Horizontally means across other people's eyes, opinions, reactions. Who am I in relation to them? Who am I in this group? Who do they think I am? Vertically means downward, into your own depths, upward, into something larger than your small ego. What do I feel when everything goes quiet? What actually matters to me beneath trends and pressure? What patterns keep repeating in my life? What does my soul keep asking for underneath everything I should want? If you've never gone vertical, if your self-concept has always depended on the horizontal, on who texts you back, who desires you, who validates you, then solitude feels like death, because horizontally there's no one there to mirror you. But the truth is, if you don't know who you are without those mirrors, you aren't actually in relationships. You're in performances. You present an image. They respond to the image. Everyone reacts to everyone else's persona. And somewhere deep in your chest, you feel the ache. Does anyone actually know me? The more you ignore that ache, the more you chase distraction. Jung's sentence, "If you're scared to be alone, you don't know yourself yet," isn't saying you're weak. It's saying, of course you're scared. You've never been properly introduced to yourself. Come closer. There's someone here you haven't met. Solitude as a doorway, not a sentence. Imagine, for a moment, that being alone wasn't punishment, but an invitation to finally meet the one person you will never lose, your own soul. What if alone didn't mean nobody wants me? What if, in its clearest form, it meant I am with myself right now? Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires periods of withdrawal from the noise, not because people are bad, not because you should live on a mountaintop, but because you cannot hear your own voice if you never step away from the crowd. Solitude is where you start to. Notice what actually lights you up when nobody's watching. Feel what genuinely exhausts you versus what you've pretended to enjoy. Recognize which values are yours and which were inherited from family or culture. Hear your intuition without 10 other opinions on top of it. At first, this is uncomfortable. Like meeting a relative you've avoided for years. There might be awkwardness, resentment, old pain. If you've neglected yourself for a long time, don't be surprised if the first thing you feel when you sit with yourself is anger. Anger that you've abandoned your own needs. Anger that you stayed in places that hurt. Anger that no one taught you how to love yourself without conditions. Let that come. Because before you can know yourself, you have to be willing to hear the truth from yourself. Solitude is not empty. It's full of everything you've been postponing, and as you face it, slowly, gently, you start clearing space. Space for peace, space for creativity, space for preferences, boundaries, desires, space for a self that isn't just reacting, but choosing. Let's make this painfully practical. You don't learn to be with yourself by suddenly spending a week in silence. That would feel like psychic whiplash if you're used to constant noise. You learn the way you learn anything else. Gradually. 5 minutes of no noise while you drink your coffee. Not scrolling, not planning your whole day, just noticing. Notice how quickly your hand reaches for distraction. Notice what thoughts rush in. Notice how your body feels when you're not immediately occupied. Not to judge it, to see it. 20 minutes of a walk without headphones. Let your mind wander. Notice what it does when it's not being entertained for it. Does it attack you? Does it replay old arguments? Does it obsessively compare? Again, not to shame it, but to understand the default setting. Jung would say, you cannot transform what you refuse to see. Journaling, not as a performance, but as a conversation. Instead of writing for some hypothetical audience, write as if you are finally giving your soul a pen. What are you angry about? What are you scared to admit? What do you wish someone would ask you? What do you need from me right now? It will feel strange at first, forced, artificial. But that's how every new relationship starts. A little awkward, a little clumsy. You've just never applied that same patience to your relationship with yourself. If you're still here, and some part of you is thinking, I don't want to live my whole life unable to sit with myself, take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you haven't. You're quietly choosing a different kind of life, one where your own presence isn't the scariest place you know. How knowing yourself transforms your relationships. Here's the irony. The more comfortable you become being alone, the less lonely you are in relationships. Because when you don't know yourself, you enter relationships from hunger and fear. You're starving for validation. You're terrified of abandonment. You're willing to contort yourself not to be left. You accept half love because the alternative, being with yourself, feels unbearable. So you ignore red flags, you tolerate disrespect, you settle for almosts and maybes, and it's complicated. You cling to people who keep leaving, not because you're foolish, because your nervous system believes being mistreated with someone is safer than being alone with me. Once you start building a relationship with yourself, that belief cracks. You begin to experience what it's like to have your own back. Comfort yourself when you're sad. Validate your own perceptions instead of gaslighting yourself. Enjoy your own company, even a little. Jung would say you're withdrawing projections. You're no longer giving all your power and wholeness to others. Slowly, your standards shift. The question changes from, will they leave me, to, do I like who I am in their presence? Do I feel more me or less me around them? Suddenly, not everyone can have you. Not because you're better than them, but because your soul refuses to shrink to fit rooms where you can't breathe. You might still feel lonely sometimes. That's human. But you no longer feel hollow, because there is someone with you now. You become the one constant, instead of the one always waiting to be chosen. The archetype of the hermit, and why it matters. Jung often spoke in archetypes, universal images that live in all of us. One of them is the hermit, or the wise old man, woman. The figure who goes alone into the mountains, the desert, the woods, not to escape life forever, but to go inward, to listen, to receive insight that can't be heard in the marketplace. You carry that archetype within you too. It shows up in those moments when you think, I just need space. I just want to be left alone for a little while. I need to clear my head. But then you immediately drown that impulse with more noise because you're scared of what you'll find. The hermit archetype is not asking you to disappear. It's inviting you to pause the performance long enough to remember your own name. Age often activates this archetype more strongly. After enough years of playing roles, something in you longs for truth. You get tired of forcing small talk. You get tired of posting a life that doesn't feel like yours. You get tired of pretending you're fine in rooms where your soul is starving. The hermit in you says, "Come away for a bit, let's reset, let's strip off the costumes, let's ask what's real now." If you obey that call in small ways, a quiet night with a journal instead of another event, a walk alone instead of squeezing in one more obligation, you will notice something surprising. The more time you spend in honest solitude, the less scary solitude becomes, because the someone you meet there is no longer your enemy. You're not behind. You're just beginning to meet yourself. Maybe you're listening and thinking, I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s, beyond, and I still don't know how to be alone. I still feel panicked without noise and people. Does that mean I've failed? No. Jung would tell you, most people never even get to the point where they notice their fear of being alone. They just endlessly outrun it. The fact that you can name it, feel it, and are curious about it already means something in you is waking up. You're not late. You're on the exact timing of your own soul. You can start now, with 5 quiet minutes, with one honest page of writing, with one evening where you don't fill every empty space with other people's lives. You don't have to become a monk. You don't have to love every second of being alone. You're just learning that your presence does not have to be experienced as a threat. One day, it might even feel like relief. If you're still here, this part is especially for you, the one who hates quiet because of what it brings up. You, the one who keeps relationships alive far past their expiration date because the idea of being alone scares you more than being half-loved. You, the one who doesn't know how to answer, "What do you like?" without thinking first of what other people think is cool. There is nothing weak about you. You were taught to build your whole sense of self around other people. Of course, the thought of being with yourself feels like stepping into outer space without a helmet. But hear this, you are not an empty room. You are full of stories, desires, talents, fears, patterns, wisdom, and depth that you have never had the time, safety, or tools to fully explore. Being alone is not proof that no one wants you. Sometimes it's proof that life is finally giving you a chance to want yourself, to say, I am here. I choose to get to know the person I've been dragging around, criticizing and abandoning for years. I might not know how yet, but I am willing. If some part of you, even a small, shaky part, is whispering, I want that. I want to be able to sit with myself and not be terrified. Type here in the comments if you haven't already. Not for anyone else, for you, to mark this as a moment you decided to move toward yourself instead of away. And if this message wrapped itself around a very scared, very tired part of you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next time your soul needs language for what it's going through. When you're about to sleep tonight, that's usually when the fear of being alone speaks the loudest. The phone is down, the house is quiet, and the old stories start creeping in. Look at you, alone again. Everyone else is with someone. This is what you get. Instead of letting those voices win the night, give your subconscious something different to fall asleep to. The playlist is at the end of this video. It will pop up on the end screen. Hit play on that playlist and let it run softly in the background as you drift off. Your body will rest, but your subconscious will keep listening. Keep learning that your own presence is not a punishment. Keep soothing the part of you that equates silence with abandonment. Keep teaching your nervous system that being with yourself can be safe, warm, even comforting. Save the playlist, fall asleep with it, and let these messages sink from your mind into your soul until one day you notice that a quiet evening alone doesn't feel like a verdict anymore. You light a candle, you make yourself something to eat, You sit down with your thoughts, and instead of running, you stay, not because you have no other options, but because being with yourself finally feels like coming home.